Hey, Makka and Stuart here. My name's Makka. Did about 15 years commercial radio, maybe a little bit more, but yeah, it is what it is. A lot of that time here locally on CFM and HIT as well. I spent a lot of time with the community, working on a lot of community projects. I love this place, that's why I stuck around. And I talked to this guy on the radio quite a fair bit back in the day. This is Stuart.
Hi, I'm Stuart Taylor. I was a councillor on the Fraser Coast Regional Council for about 8 years. It was a fantastic time. I'm now working as the business manager at Surveyors at Work. I love my community. I've really enjoyed my relationship with Makka. We have some strong opinions and we have some good chats. And that's what we're hoping here, is that we can have a good chat about something important.
Yeah, look, Who Gives a Vote is about who gives a vote.
What did you say?
Well, that's right. I mean, that's basically what it is, because we've got to a point where a lot of us are going, why are we even voting? Like, how does this work? Who are these people? Realistically, we're just seeing heads on a stick at the moment, right?
It's really concerning that we're less than 2 months from an election that decides 11 positions that set the strategic direction for our community. And a lot of people don't even know who's running, and if they are running, what they stand for.
Yeah, look, obviously with all the craziness of 2020 and the years following that, there's a huge amount of people, like especially in my own circles, that go, are we even doing anything by voting other than not getting a fine, right?
That's a question you asked. The answer, I would say, is absolutely. Every vote counts. Every opinion matters. That's democracy. And I hope that through our chats, as the election comes on, that people will start to see that every individual opinion matters, because democracy matters. If we didn't have democracy, well, the options aren't really great.
Look, it's exciting when you see some of these new faces pop up. And I really want to learn a lot more about these people. Like, I would definitely have a leaning more towards people that are younger. That's not to say that the people with experience aren't going to be necessary, but I would love to see that mix in council of getting some younger people going for those, youth issues, and also having people with experience as well.
I always like to say it's about having a good representation that reflects your community. So if you've got women and men in your community, you need to have women and men in your council. If you've got different cultures, different backgrounds, you need to have that reflected in your council.
Look, one of the big things that I think has been missing in society in general is mentorship. It's so important. Like, you think about like the basic things in our community, like apprenticeships. You've got a mentorship in there, but we don't often see that within local councils. And I think having a great mentorship, some great leaders that have been around, are going to help make this community better, and everybody working together. And there is so much to learn from everyone, whether they're younger or older than you.
Local governments and elections by their nature are adversarial, so it doesn't lend itself towards mentorship, but I think it's vitally important. This is probably a good segue for us to talk about what the structure of council will look like. So in 2008, council amalgamated. There was 4 councils. 2 of them were larger councils, in the Hervey Bay Council and the Maryborough Council, both cities.
Sure.
And they added onto that Wuku and Tyro. So you had this collection of councils come together, and it changed the way that we vote. It changed the structure of our governance. So for Fraser Coast Regional Council, we have 11 positions in our council, but each resident can only vote for 2 people. And that is the councillor for their division. So there's 10 divisions on the Fraser Coast Regional Council, 1 through to 10, and they represent a portion, or 10% of the population of Fraser Coast Regional Council within a percentage. And then you have the mayor, who runs for the entire Fraser Coast. So if you take Division 6, for example, that's Eli Waters and Point Vernon. If you live in Point Vernon, you can only vote for someone in Division 6 who's running for Division 6 and the mayor. You can't vote for someone in Division 10 or 9 or 6. So that's the makeup. Each division has about 8,000 to 9,000 people in it. So 8,000 to 9,000 people from each division decide one councillor, and then the 87,000 voters, get to decide who the mayor is.
Okay, let's break this down simply though, right? Because not everyone's going to watch this full clip. That's just the nature of how things work.
Everyone will be watching it.
Yeah. Everyone in Wuku, shout out, please be watching. Okay, so let's talk about our council in general. It hasn't really been in existence for that long.
No, as we said before, so in 2008, I think it was, pre-2008, it was the Beattie government, the Labor government, that decided that they were going to amalgamate councils across the entire Queensland. And they amalgamated hundreds of councils into 77 councils. And the Fraser Coast was one of those councils that were amalgamated with 4 councils, 2 big ones, the Maryborough, Hervey Bay, Wuku and Tyro.
It would have annoyed so many people.
Oh, it's a massive controversial issue.
You can only imagine, because you're like, well, is this really going to be representing my area? You know, so shout out to Wuku. Don't forget those guys.
It's important that we recognise, we're honest, that we're from Hervey Bay.
Yeah.
So even this talk, we are going to be talking about issues that affect us, which is Hervey Bay, more than the others, because we simply are unaware of them. I'd encourage anyone who is in our region, if you have an issue, give us a call, touch base with us, and we can have that conversation.
I would love to hear from some of these more regional areas that aren't Hervey Bay, and I totally agree. Hervey Bay does get the spotlight. I used to broadcast across the whole region. We'd go to Maryborough every day, and we'd broadcast. Hervey Bay was the biggest market, but there are all these calls that we would get each morning from all these smaller areas, and this council does represent everyone in those smaller areas as well. So yeah, we do want to hear from people. So just quickly going through it, from the first mayor was Mick Kruger. He had 1 term, Gerard O'Connell 1 term, Chris Loft half a term, and George Seymour 1.5 terms. That's still really fresh, really, when it comes to mayors, when you look at mayors of Brisbane and places like that.
Yes, certainly. Maryborough, Tyro, Hervey Bay even, and Wuku all have a great history of their mayoralship. And Maryborough in particular has some really great legacy. But when you're talking about an amalgamated council, absolutely, 2008, 4 mayors. And so we're fairly new in relation to that representation.
And so, I don't know, would we be almost like teenagers now?
I think we've got past amalgamation.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest. 2008 to 2012, a lot of councillors lost the election because people were still angry with amalgamation. You had 2 councils in Queensland that actually de-amalgamated, and that cost a lot of money. You had, I think, a more settled time between 2012 to 2016. 2016 to 2020 got a bit tumultuous because we lost a mayor who went to jail. So that was a very difficult time for the history of the Fraser Coast. And now we've got a council, I think, that's probably keeping its head down a little bit because of the previous, controversies that have befallen it.
I get you. All right, so let's talk important dates here.
Yeah, there are some really important dates. 29th of January is when candidates for all divisions and the mayor can nominate. That lasts up until the 13th of February. The nominations close on the 13th of February, and then on Valentine's Day at 10 a.m, and hopefully we can go down there and say hooray to everyone.
Yeah.
But on the 14th of February, you'll have the ballots drawn, and that's a pretty big deal because that puts a line in the sand and says, absolutely, these are the candidates that are running.
Yep.
But it also puts the order how they're in on the ballot paper.
Okay, which is important, right?
Politicians won't tell you that it bothers them, but if they don't get number 1, they're sort of feeling pretty shady. I liken it to a footballer who puts his left boot on first because that's the way he's always done it, and it's good luck. But does it make a difference? Probably not.
Early voting 4th of March to Friday 15th of March, excluding the weekend.
Yeah, it used to be that early voting you needed a really good excuse. Now more people early vote than they actually do vote on the day.
Oh, the early voting for me is fantastic. I love that, especially because your life shouldn't have to revolve around it. I'm not saying that this isn't important, but your life shouldn't have to revolve around it. We've got kids, we've got families, we've got friends, we've got places to be, we've got work, Yeah.
Well, when you have it in one day, people are lining up for 2 or 3 hours. This is an effective way. It does get a bit harder for people with less resource. So if you're a new candidate and you don't have community support, then you've got to find people to hand out at the election booths and pre-polling for 2 weeks. And that can be quite tiring for a council candidate that doesn't have that support. So that's something they need to think about as well.
All right, let's move along. Let's talk about, is it a local government issue?
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest criticisms I have for candidates. Do your homework, know what the issues are. And there are many things that council do, but you've got to have an opinion on roads, you've got to have an opinion on waste, and you've got to have an opinion on water and community infrastructure. There's a lot of things that aren't council issues: policing, law, education, health. they're not council issues. So I think you need to stick to your lane if you're running for an election, and also if you want to make representation to a councillor, find out what those issues are.
Well, you need to get them right. If somebody didn't collect your garbage bin for 2 weeks, we'd have serious problems. So
yeah,
that's got to be, one of the main things on there. Can we talk about, with council issues, can we talk about overreach?
This is something that when I've been speaking to people, it's probably the biggest issue.
Just have a look at how the rate system's working at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's probably not the rate system is the rate system, and the way we collect rates is legislated. But the feedback that I'm getting is the use of debt collecting mercenaries from out of town. So there is hundreds of thousands of dollars going out of town for debt collectors to chase down local residents, many of who are struggling to keep their homes because of interest rates, that have lost jobs during COVID, and they're actually psychologically struggling with getting back on top of things.
Yes.
I know I've spoken to people, they're saying, we're paying an extra $800 a month for our mortgage, and we've got one income. We can't afford just to put food on the table or send our kids to school, because school's costing $10,000 a year for them. It's very, very hard for people at the moment. And what I've found is that people are embarrassed by it, because it's a lot of people who've not really had money issues before.
Yes.
All of a sudden they're facing this, and then they're getting phone calls from people saying they're debt collecting. If you don't pay, council's going to put you on the debt collection list. And then, they then will take them to the local magistrate's court. This was something that was never done while I was on council, and it was something I would be very opposed to. It's such an issue. I wouldn't vote for somebody who supported such an aggressive way, because what you've got to understand is that, and this isn't us and them, often you hear it, is that why don't they pay their rates? Why don't they do this? Because some people in our community are struggling. We
have completely changed. Since COVID, we have completely changed. You look at the price of things have gone up. You look at a younger person trying to get in the housing market. Trying to pay rent. Like, there's just so many big things that have happened. And it's from the guys, the bigger guys upstairs. I'm not saying just local. I'm saying, it has come down from large corporations, it's come down from larger government, right? We all know that. It's pretty obvious, right? But when they start just putting these things in, this overreach of debt collectors and all that, and then they're going, oh, sorry, well, it's not our fault. It's like they actually voted for it, didn't they? Yeah,
that's right. And they say, the legislation, the Local Government Act and the regulation allows for them to pursue people who are outstanding rates and debts through a debt collector. But let's be very clear about this. The safest debt of any debt, in my view, is your rates, because it's attributed to your home. So what used to happen is council would work with the community. So it would be a council officer calling you and saying, you have an issue with your debt, and we want to help you through it. While your debt is overdue, it attracts an 8% interest rate. So council's making 8% on that money, and the money is definitely going to come back, because if you don't pay it after 3 years, they can sell your house, and they get the first. So if your house is sold, the first income goes directly to the council for those rates to be paid. So there's no risk to that. So you don't need to get a debt collector. What you need is someone who lives in your community, understands the pressures, someone from council, because we trust. If someone from an obscure debt collection agency calls you and says, you owe council money, and then you say, are you with council? And they say no, you're going to hang up. Why do you think you're going to hang up? Because every text message, you get 10 text messages a day from someone telling you owe money, that you've got a parcel that's due. There are so many scams. People ringing you every day telling you owe money or there's an issue. So you don't trust them. You need someone from your council calling you and working through in a compassionate way. That's what used to happen. Now we have a debt collection agency. After a year, if you don't pay, I think I was looking at the legislation, then the actual debt collection agency will take you to the local magistrate's court. And by taking you to the magistrate's court, they add another $1,600, $1,800 onto a debt that you're already struggling to pay, and you've got to pay another 8% on top of that as well. I think it is an aggressive, egregious, and horrible way to treat your community. And
I don't think anyone would disagree.
yeah, now everyone that's on council right now voted for this model. I think it's terrible. I'd like to hear more people's views on overreach, because another issue on overreach that has been brought to my attention that people are really upset about is and this is not my term, but the Gestapo inspectors that come knocking on your door to see if your dogs are registered.
Yeah.
People are anxious in our community at the moment. They feel vulnerable.
Of course.
And having an authority come knocking on your door, whether you've got a dog or your dog's registered or not, it makes you feel nervous and uncomfortable because you feel like you're being put under the microscope, or that potentially in that period they could find something else to ping you for. People are feeling vulnerable. People are feeling anxious. To me, overreach has been the number one issue so far. I think it's going to be the issue that every councillor candidate is going to have to have a view on.
Oh, definitely.
Yep.
Have we got time to run through who's running in the divisions at the moment?
So this is the list as it stands this morning. So currently running for mayor, the only candidate running for mayor is George Seymour. Division 1, the current councillor has not nominated yet, but I imagine he will, and that's James Hanson.
Yep.
There's one nomination in Wayne Darcy. Division 2, Phil Truscott, the current incumbent councillor, has nominated, so he will be running. Paul Truscott is the only nominated person for Division 3, and he's the current councillor. Division 4, there's two Daniels. Daniel Sanderson, who is the current councillor, and Daniel Beattie. I don't know much about Daniel Beattie, but it'll be interesting to see what his views are. Division 5 is going to be very interesting because you've got Michelle Glovers, who hasn't nominated but has got signs and a Facebook page around the site, and there's no issue that she hasn't nominated. You've got till the 13th of February.
Sure.
But Jade Wellings, who got elected at the beginning of this term, is not running again. So she's only served one term and she's decided to step down, which means that Division 5 is definitely
ready
contentious.
to go.
Yeah, it's ready to take. The other one is Division 6. David Lewis is the councillor. He is not running, so he's not standing again. And because of that, you see a lot of people now standing up. You've got Chris Pearce, who's not yet nominated but is announced. Catherine Forgan, who has not yet nominated but has announced. And then you've got Alicia Wade, who has announced and has nominated, so she's on the ECQ website. Then Division 7, this is an interesting one too, because it was held by Darren Everard, and he would have, if he ran again, he would have got in without any question.
Yeah.
He resigned a couple of months ago, or maybe 6 months ago. Jan Hegg was appointed, so she's the appointed councillor. She's not been elected. I think she's run previously and didn't win an election. So she's been appointed by the other 10 councillors and mayor. And she has now nominated, so she'll be contesting this and seeking the vote. Andrew Broad has nominated. And we'll start learning about this. As I said, Darren Everard resigned, and then John Wayland has nominated as well. Dennis Chapman is the current councillor for Division 8 and the only person to nominate for Division 8 so far. Another really interesting division is Division 9. I know you're pretty aware of this one too. David Lee, he's not standing. He's been pre-selected for the state election to run for the Liberal National Party for the state election in October, so he's not running.
He's not in,
Which means that there are Sarah Farage. And she has announced but not nominated. And then you've got Greg Watts, who has nominated. And that leaves Division 10, which is a previous councillor, Rolf Light. He was a previous councillor for Division 5, but he's now running for Division 10. He's nominated. Zane O'Keefe is the current councillor. He's not yet nominated. And then you've got Luke Strocknetter, which I believe is part of the Young Professionals, a young lad.
Luke is,
Yeah, he's announced but not nominated. So that's a pretty big list, and I'm pretty sure it's going to grow.
Yeah. It's great to see some new names in there.
Yeah.
You know, it always is, and it's good to see what people will bring, and competition is good, right? Like, choice is good. It's good to have different choices, you know?
Yeah. So I guess then from that, who are the front runners? What's the council going to look like? And that's what I want to sort of chat today about as well.
Okay, yeah, give me a rundown how you think it's looking. We'll try and make it as brief as possible.
Yeah.
But where do you see it sitting in the order of things?
So what I've done here, and I want to be clear on this, is I haven't selected the people I would vote for. That's irrelevant whether I'd vote for them, whether I like them or not. It's about who I think currently are the front runners and most likely to be elected.
Okay.
Then we've gone through and we've made an assessment based on their historical either voting or what they've said to whether they're conservative, so more national liberal, or progressive, green, or Labor. Don't like those terms, but that's the terms.
Yeah, those are the terms, yeah.
So I'm going to hit you with what I think the council will be.
Okay.
And we've measured each one and we've come up with where we sit as far as whether it's going to be a conservative council or a progressive council. So George Seymour will be mayor.
Okay.
There's no one running against him. If they did, they're very unlikely to be elected. He will win, and he'll win convincingly. James Hanson, Division 1, I think he wins no matter who's up against him. He has got an incredible, a different view to mine, but the people in his division like him. Phil Truscott will be Division 2 again. Paul Truscott will be Division 3. I think Daniel Sanderson keeps Division 4. At the moment, you can only say Michelle Glovers is Division 5 because she's the only nominated candidate at the moment. I think out of all the candidates currently, Alicia Wade is doing the best in Division 6. I think she's nominated. She's got all her call flutes out. She's been doing door knocking, letterbox drops. So I see her as being well and truly the front runner for Division 6. And then I think at the moment, Division 7, you've got to give it just based on the fact that Jan Hegg has been there for not 6 months, that people want to give her another shot.
There she goes, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not discounting John Wayland. I really like John Wayland. I think he's a really good candidate. I think Dennis Chapman gets in regardless of who goes up against him. I think he's got a very strong representation in Division 8. I'm going to say Sarah Fahaj for Division 9. And I think Rolf Light will win convincingly against Zane O'Keefe as the incumbent or the current councillor. I think Rolf is a very effective in running for election. Okay,
so let's just be frank here. This is like fantasy football, but you are backing it with a few let's say past scores that people have had. Yeah. But in that, just looking at all those names there on paper, how would you see that as a council working together with all those people?
So let's
fantasy football. Yeah. Just think of that right now. Yeah. This is not.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what it is. And I reserve the right to change my opinion next week.
Sure.
So we'll do this we can look at this every week. So I would say what you are going to have is you're going to have a conservative chamber and a progressive mayor. So that might cause issues, it might not.
Interesting. If you are somebody that is running for council, contact us. We would love to talk to people. We want to talk to everyone. I really want to know more about these people. And you know what? Just even from a perspective of being a bit of an inquisitive person about other people, sticky beak maybe, I'd like to know who these people are, like that are on council. And I'm sure everybody else wants to know about these people. Learn a little bit more. This isn't about trying to stick the knife into people. This is about going, who are you? What do you do? Absolutely. What are we doing here? What do you reckon you'll do on council? What's some great ideas? Where's your head at? Why should people vote for you? Because again, it's just heads on sticks. It's just little signs. And we can talk about the millimetre sign. That's the best one as well next week. Which plastic do you use?
5 mil Australian made call flute mate. It's the best. I've seen people use 3 mil and it's just, unfortunately.
Doesn't work. No, it's not cyclone proof.
No, 2 sticks.
2 sticks.
Not one.
Always
it,
2.
It bends. Yeah, they're the big issues.
They're the big ones.
But talking about big issues, if you have an issue that you want to raise, we want to have an issue board.
Yep.
We want to fill it up. We want to have discussions that are specifically council matters. And we want to hold this council to account so that they at least understand what it is that our community wants. But more than anything, we want an engaged community.
Who gives a vote? That's us. Make sure you check it out. And if you want to chat to us, please, we want to hear from you. Thank you.